Hello, readers by eyes and by ears. This is Mari Chan, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I am super excited because we are moving on to Volume 2 of the Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish, also known as my shortened name, 残疾暴君, by Xue Shan Fei Hu. And if you read the ending of Volume 1, you know how it ended. And we are excited to see more interactions between human Liu and Prince Jing. So let's get started. Enjoy. Chapter 39. Fish Sneezes. Prince Jing made a note of the carp spirit's name. Liu was quite fitting, he thought. It seemed he hadn't made a mistake when he decided to call him Xiaoyu. But all the spirits in the storybooks he'd researched were at the very minimum hundreds or thousands of years old, and his fish was only 18. This made him basically an adult by human standards, but it was much too young for a Yao. Of course, he knew it was possible that the carp spirit was lying to him about his age, but that didn't stop Prince Jing's conclusion that the carp spirit's cultivation level must be quite low, since he could only transform for 2 hours a day. The carp spirit seemed to be hiding why he'd come here, but Prince Jing wasn't in a hurry to ask. He didn't want to scare Xiaoyu away. Prince Jing continued to write. Why did you save me? Liu wasn't quite sure how to answer. After all, he didn't think the incident when he helped Prince Jing rinse out his eyes was such a big deal. On further consideration, he decided Prince Jing must be asking about the matter regarding the House of Changle. Trying to be as concise as possible, he explained. I found out the second prince's plot by a stroke of luck, and I wanted to let Yeshutsu know so he could put up his guard. All I did was write a letter. Everything else that happened was thanks to the plans Your Highness and Yeshutsu made, so I really don't think that counts as saving Your Highness. Prince Jing was taken aback to hear Liu answer the wrong question, but he didn't bother correcting him. If Xiaoyu didn't even take credit for something as important as saving Ye Qinghuan, then there was no use mentioning cleaning his eyes either. Prince Jing was becoming increasingly pleased with this fish. He wrote, Where are you staying now? Wasn't he staying in Prince Jing's manor, seeing Prince Jing every day? But that would definitely make Prince Jing suspicious, Liu thought, so he lied and said, I don't have a fixed residence, so I just wander. Prince Jing was taken aback by his fishy audacity. He wanted badly to expose his secret. Unfortunately, a bunch of people, including the emperor and his concubines, were outside the warmed chamber, so he couldn't reveal his hand at such a critical moment. It wasn't just that he couldn't expose Liu, he also had to do everything he could to protect him. It would be best to take this lying little humanoid fish back to his manor and stamp him with his seal. It was far too audacious and risky for him to just show up in the palace like this. Since you have nowhere to stay, come to my manor, Prince Jing wrote. Liu was startled. He couldn't believe that Prince Jing was willing to give him, a stranger with no identity, a place to stay. You'd really take me in? Liu had to confirm. But why? We've only met a few times. Prince Jing's expression was serious as he wrote, You saved me before, as well as the House of Changle. I trust you. This was too good to be true. The issue of his suspicious human self was solved just like that. But if I come to the manor, I'm very busy, so I may not have much time to do things with you. Liu looked a bit troubled. It would be great if he could exist as a resident of Prince Jing's manor, since then he'd be able to walk around freely. But if that happened, he'd have to actually help Prince Jing out. He couldn't just freeload. However, with his 2-hour transformation limit, the most he could do was sweep the yard. Surely Prince Jing's manor had plenty of those sorts of servants already. But no one knew this fish's daily life better than Prince Jing. All he did every day was eat and drink his fill, and occasionally accompany the prince while he was reading or drawing. Most of the time, he just blew bubbles, swam around, or slept under his water plant quilt. Prince Jing wasn't sure if this fish, who had barely gotten any chances to suck essence recently, was actually busy or just pretending to be busy. He felt a little disgruntled. In any case, there was no way he could have the fish clean the yard. Prince Jing wrote, "Don't worry too much. You can stay in the manor if you just do one thing." "What is it?" Li Yu asked expectantly. "I have a fish. When I'm not around, help me take care of him." Li Yu gaped at Prince Jing like, well, a fish. Prince Jing, afraid he wouldn't understand, pointed toward the crystal bottle. When they'd sat down earlier, Li Yu purposefully blocked the bottle with his body so that Prince Jing wouldn't realize the fish inside was gone. But it seemed that Prince Jing really hadn't noticed, or else he wouldn't point at it for him to look at. So Prince Jing wanted him to take care of his fish. Li Yu hastily nodded in agreement. Of course he'd accept such a generous offer. He didn't know how to do much, but taking care of himself was right up his alley. "All right, I can do that. I can help your highness take care of your fish." As they were talking, there was a knock on the door. Prince Jing glanced at Li Yu, who quickly covered his mouth. Outside, Wang Xi said, "Your highness, the emperor has started asking after you." Prince Jing had come to this warmed chamber in the side hall with the excuse that he needed to change. He couldn't spend hours in here. Prince Jing looked at Li Yu again and wrote, "Watch my fish for me here. Someone will go out the room, so don't worry." He patted Li Yu gently on the shoulder. "Your highness." A warm current flooded through Li Yu's heart, leaving him so touched that he sniffled a bit. Prince Jing had solved all the problems that plagued him and even told him not to worry. Since it was Prince Jing's promise, he truly believed it. No wonder he was so happy when Prince Jing said he'd take him in. Staying close to his tyrant master was what made him feel most at peace. Prince Jing walked out of the warm chamber and ordered Wang Xi to keep guarding the door for him. Nobody was to enter or leave. Wang Xi didn't quite understand it, but he did as he was told. Meanwhile, the emperor had ordered the imperial physician to examine concubine Chu's arm injury again, but it was impossible to make any further conclusions. The emperor started to wonder if he'd overthought it and misunderstood her, and he was beginning to look at her more kindly. Since all the concubines were present, Concubine Chu couldn't stay lying in her bed the entire time, so she came out with the emperor after a while to see them. Though Concubine Chu was ill, Consort Qian saw she had still put on exquisite makeup and wore a thin, fragile-looking inner coat. She internally cursed Concubine Chu for her slyness, but at the end of the day, she wouldn't embarrass herself in front of the emperor. Since the emperor wasn't punishing Concubine Chu, Consort Qian decided she should follow his example and stop targeting her, warmly calling her sister instead. When Concubine Chu was still a noble consort, she hadn't respected Consort Qian due to her mediocre appearance. Now, however, she was smiling and laughing at her jokes as if they were close. Prince Jing had been wearing a black robe before. Now he had changed into a silver-hemmed sapphire one. It was rare to see him without the crystal bottle, so the emperor teased him and said, "You finally learned you can't take it everywhere." "Got splashed a couple of times, did you?" Wang Xi had been tasked with guarding the warmed chamber, so he couldn't accompany Prince Jing. For all that Prince Jing wanted to change the subject somehow, it wasn't easy to make the emperor understand his thoughts without his usual interpreter. Instead, he simply stayed silent and let the emperor misunderstand. Prince Jing watched from afar as Concubine Chu chatted with Consort Qian. He'd sent someone to pass the information along to the third prince, but it seemed like the third prince's progress was slow. Consort Qian was clearly plotting something, as she kept trying to lend an arm to support Concubine Chu. However, Concubine Chu was extremely careful, and her confidants wouldn't let the other consort get close, pushing her away every time. Consort Qian was anxious whenever she thought of her son's mission for her, but she couldn't be so blatant that Concubine Chu would realize what she was doing. The third prince was struggling too. He'd received the information from Prince Jing, but he only half believed it. He couldn't randomly suggest another examination of Concubine Chu's arm before the situation was clear. Concubine Chu was, after all, his father's former consort. Instead, he sent his people to look for Huanhua in the imperial garden. The sixth prince had the same idea and signaled to him to wait for more news. For now, all the third prince could do was try to subtly ask around about concubine Chu's injury, although even this much was beginning to irritate the emperor, who stared at him coldly. The third prince was afraid that he'd properly upset the emperor if he was being too suspicious, so he quieted down after a while. Concubine Chu, assuming her bid for sympathy was working, knelt and pleaded, "Your Majesty, Jiao'er knows he was wrong. He's been worried about my injury, and I haven't seen him since he left the palace. I would be immensely grateful if Your Majesty would grant me the favor of letting Jiao'er into the palace to keep me company for a bit." Mu Tianzhao had dared to plot against the Duke of Chang'an. This was a huge mistake, and Concubine Chu knew it. She wouldn't be so brazen as to ask the emperor to pardon him, only for him to lift the ban. As long as he could still enter the palace, all was not lost. Though the emperor had hastily demoted the second prince to marquis, Concubine Chu was sure she understood the emperor well enough. As long as his heart softened once, she could slowly and gradually cajole him, perhaps even to the point where he might change his mind and make the Marquis of An a prince again. How could Concubine Chu accept that even the mute fifth prince could hold a title of prince while Mu Tianzhao languished as a marquis? Her Jiao'er was the emperor's eldest son. Concubine Chu had actually quite accurately predicted the emperor's usual thought process. However, the emperor had already read the Marquis of An's letter where he pleaded to visit his mother. So, when she came to beg for the same thing, the emperor remained hesitant. Concubine Chu had been hurt in the fire. Did that mean she deserved an award? Why were they both asking for a favor? The emperor told her mildly, "Recover from your injuries first. There's no need to speak of anything else." Concubine Chu was shocked that the emperor didn't relent. Even though she wanted to say a lot more, she didn't dare. All right. The emperor really didn't want to talk about the Marquis of An anymore, so he changed the subject. "You've seen Prince Jing's fish before, correct?" Fish? At the sound of this word, embarrassing memories flooded into Concubine Chu's mind. She'd briefly forgotten the incident, but the trauma it had caused ran deep in her psyche. The terror of being slapped in the face by a fish made her bite her lip until it nearly bled, and she asked anxiously, "Why did you mention the fish all of a sudden, Your Majesty?" The emperor chuckled. "That fish is no normal fish. It has grown golden scales. I believe it is an auspicious sign. You should come take a look too." A fire in Zhongshui Palace was, after all, far from auspicious. The emperor considered Prince Jing's fish a good omen and thought he remembered that Concubine Chu didn't seem to like the fish. He hoped she would stop driving herself into a corner. Wouldn't it be better to make up with Prince Jing than keep trying to cling onto the Marquis of An? It could also wash away Concubine Chu's bad luck. Concubine Chu just barely managed to not look bewildered. She couldn't follow the emperor's train of thought at all. He'd already turned to Prince Jing, smiling, and ordered him to bring the little carp over. Prince Jing's heart tightened. It hadn't been 2 hours, and he didn't know if Xiaoyu had transformed back yet. He couldn't take Xiaoyu out of the room right now, so he had to think of a way to stall. Since Wang Xi wasn't around, Prince Jing asked Luo Reishang to prepare some ink and a brush. He picked up the brush, writing slowly to take up more time. When he saw Prince Jing's bold calligraphy, the emperor was quite happy. The gist of what Prince Jing had written was that while he was getting changed in the warm chamber in the side hall, he had fed the fish at the same time. The fish was taking a nap at that moment to digest its meal. The emperor found himself in a slightly awkward position. He knew that Prince Jing loved his fish, and now that it had started growing golden scales, the emperor considered it uniquely auspicious among fish. He had to be extra patient. The emperor chuckled. "In that case, I'll punish Prince Jing with a couple of rounds of go while we wait." Prince Jing nodded in agreement, and Luo Reishang immediately rushed to bring over the go board. The emperor almost never lost at go. But he lost 2 games in a row against Prince Jing. Prince Jing only won by a narrow margin each time, though. The emperor was smiling as he internally scolded him. What a brat. Even though he lost, the emperor didn't really mind. While the games were in progress, the third prince came over to watch. He wanted to join in on the fun, but he was the worst at Go of all the princes. He still chimed in occasionally, even though he didn't understand the game, but the emperor thought he was a nuisance and made him go away. When the third prince looked at Prince Jing again, his eyes were full of admiration, envy, and hatred. He'd wanted to win him over to his side in the past, but he was a bit more wary of Prince Jing now. The sixth prince smiled and pulled on his arm. Third brother, one should keep silent during a game of Go. I don't quite understand the game either, so let's stand to the side and wait. The emperor usually barely noticed the sixth prince, but seeing him come to help the third prince at just the right moment, the emperor's opinion of his son improved. After those 2 rounds of Go, Prince Jing figured it was about time. He got up to go to the warm chamber and find his fish. He found Wang Xi still diligently guarding the door to the room. Prince Jing had said nobody was allowed to enter or leave, and that was how it would be. The servants who showed up to serve tea were all stopped at the door. When conversing with the emperor, every word and sentence had to be fearful and cautious. Meanwhile, Liu Yu was hiding in this room, relaxed and free of worry. When Prince Jing went out, he'd left behind the jade box used to feed his fish. It was filled with fish food and the desserts that he knew his fish liked. Prince Jing held the jade box in his lap and ate out of it directly while he waited for his 2 hours to be up. It was very reassuring to know Prince Jing was outside, so much so that it felt as if time passed more quickly. When the system began its countdown, he closed the jade box and waited next to his fish tank. Liu Yu had just jumped back into the crystal bottle when Prince Jing came back into the room. Ah, master! Liu Yu flicked his tail. Your fish fed himself just like he was supposed to. At first, the little carp was worried that when his human form disappeared, Prince Jing would look for him. But he didn't. He came straight to the bottle and took the fish and crystal bottle away. Your Highness, the person who was in the room just now. Wang Xi wanted to ask where the male concubine had gone, since he kept appearing and disappearing suddenly. Prince Jing glanced at him. He left already. Wang Gonggong was utterly and completely confused. But the little carp whom Prince Jing always carried around with him felt his anxious heart settle back down. It seemed Prince Jing was already used to him disappearing all the time. Prince Jing brought Liu Yu before the emperor. The little carp was quite surprised when he saw concubine Chu. Why was the noble consort here? Had nobody slapped her in the face yet? Or had the plot that he knew changed yet again? The emperor asked Prince Jing to bring the fish closer and asked concubine Chu to come closer as well. Her body was stiff, and she stared uncomfortably at the fish in the crystal bottle, her eyes almost bulging out of her head. Although the fish's stomach and tail had golden scales on them now, she was sure that this was the fish that had slapped her in the face before. She would recognize this damned fish even if he turned into fish bones and fish ash. But here she was, with the emperor asking her to take a good look at the fish. Concubine Chu was entirely unwilling, but she couldn't disobey the emperor, especially when it was clear from his words and actions that he really valued this fish. Concubine Chu forced herself to get closer, wrenching her trembling lips into a painstaking smile. She wanted to say something to praise the fish, but she had cursed this fish out 10,000 times in private, so when she was suddenly faced with the need to praise him, she froze up. Liu Yu trembled in fright at Concubine Chu's rictus grin, and then he noticed the scent of cypress. Huh? Was the noble consort still using her old tricks? Why hadn't the sixth prince and third princess done anything yet? Liu Yu fervently glanced at the third prince. He looked extremely resentful, as if he wanted to throw himself in front of the fish. Liu Yu suddenly understood. Was it just that the third prince was useless and he couldn't find the right time to expose her? This was no good. Perhaps Liu Yu really was fated to confront the noble consort himself. Now was the time for him to make his move. It was boring to just float belly up every time. Li Yu smiled naughtily. This time, he'd try something else. Concubine Chu stared at the fish without blinking. Suddenly, she had a bad feeling that the fish was going to try something devious again. The fish kept flicking his tail at her. Speckled with golden scales, his black tail was alluring and beautiful. As Concubine Chu watched, she became somewhat entranced. Suddenly, the fish shuddered and with a pop spit out a trail of bubbles. He paused, shuddered again, and spit out another long trail. Concubine Chu honestly had no idea what to think of this. When the prince spit out the first set of bubbles, the emperor and Prince Jing were close enough to see it. The emperor was surprised. "Tianchi, what's wrong with the fish?" Prince Jing knew that the carp was up to something again, so of course he'd support him. With a dark expression on his face, he shot a pointed glance at Wang Xi, who had finally arrived. Wang Gonggong immediately spoke for His Highness. "Your Majesty, the fish often becomes uncomfortable when he smells something pungent. He's sneezing." This again? Although, Li Yu supposed that should work as an explanation with his current goals. Fine, Wang Gonggong. The fish won't get mad this time when you say he's sneezing. Chapter 40. A Gift for the Fish. Concubine Chu's expression turned ugly. Was the fish mocking her for her body odor? How was that possible? This fish definitely had a grudge against her. "Your Majesty, is Wang Gonggong implying that I have a strange smell and I'm suffocating the fish?" The third prince, Mu Tianming, who'd been waiting for this moment, exchanged glances with Consort Tian. "Sister, why are you acting so nervous?" said Consort Tian, taking the hint. "The fish was fine with His Highness. What is it about you that's making it so uncomfortable?" Unlike Wang Xi, Consort Tian couldn't just outright say that the fish was sneezing. She'd never heard of such a thing before, so she addressed the matter a little more tactfully. "Perhaps it really smelled something odd. You've just been injured. Let's have the imperial physician take another look at it. It's best to be careful in case the injury has worsened somehow." Concubine Chu hesitated. She knew that Consort Tian was up to no good, so of course she wanted to refuse. However, the emperor was sure that Consort Tian spoke from a place of concern, and after a moment of thought, he said, "Consort Tian is right. Why don't we summon the imperial physician to examine it again?" The previous imperial physician was called back. Mu Tianming made sure to remind him, "You must carefully examine Concubine Chu's injury for any changes, especially if there's a peculiar scent." The imperial physician agreed and examined her even more carefully than he had the previous times. Concubine Chu was panicking, but she had no idea what could possibly be wrong with her injury. Each time he had examined her wound before, the imperial physician had just told Concubine Chu to rest, but this time he knelt and begged for forgiveness. He told the emperor that while her injury was fine, the scent of cypress wood could be smelled on it, and that before he had only observed the injury itself and had failed to notice this. The scent of cypress? The emperor didn't understand what this could mean at first, except that Prince Jing's fish really could notice unusual scents. The emperor's fish approval rating increased once again. The sixth prince was usually restrained and pleasant, but something suddenly occurred to him. "Father, I don't recall that there are any cypress trees in Concubine Chu's residence, Zhongshui Palace. The injury on her arm." The emperor came to a jolting realization. He rounded on Concubine Chu. "Did you lie to me?" he said sternly. "Tell me, where were you actually injured?" When the imperial physician had mentioned cypress, Concubine Chu's legs began to tremble. Now, in the face of the emperor's glare, her mind went blank and she collapsed to her knees, quivering. How was she going to explain why her injury was stained with the scent of cypress trees that didn't grow in Zhongshui Palace? A servant rushed in hurriedly and whispered something to Mu Tianming. The third prince's eyes lit up, and he immediately stood to say, "Father, I have news regarding the fire in Zhongshui Palace. I heard that Huanhua, the servant in Zhongshui Palace, has disappeared. My guards just found a female corpse in the imperial garden, and after investigation, We've determined that the corpse is Huan Hua. What? The little carp thought palace politics were boring, so he was playing the rubbing finger game with Prince Jing and having a great time. When he heard the news, he was shocked. Huan Hua was a minor character who didn't die in the novel. How come she was dead now? No wonder it took so long for the third prince to make any progress, and he needed Li Yu to make a move instead. From what the third prince said, it wasn't clear if Huan Hua had committed suicide or if she'd been murdered. If it was the former, perhaps she'd ended her own life because she couldn't explain how the fire, originally meant to be just a small fire, had grown large enough to burn down half of Zhongshui Palace. If it was the latter, then Li Yu had no idea who'd killed Huan Hua based on just what the third prince said. Either way, Concubine Chu was the prime suspect. When Concubine Chu heard this, though, a look of surprise flashed across her face. The third prince, trying to hide the joy in his voice, said loudly, "I heard that Huan Hua used to be Concubine Chu's close personal servant. Fortunately, she wrote a note before she died, exposing her murderer." Concubine Chu knew the situation was bad. The emperor, with a grim face, said, "Bring it up." Now the investigation began in earnest. The third prince's guards confirmed that Huan Hua had been murdered and left a note before her death, which pointed to none other than her master, Concubine Chu. In her note, Huan Hua mentioned that Concubine Chu was the one who ordered her to set the fire, and that her master must have wanted to kill her to protect the secret. Normally, if someone left a note before they were murdered, the situation was guaranteed to be complicated. Li Yu sensed that something was off, but everything Huan Hua mentioned about Concubine Chu in the letter was true. As the note suggested, the emperor immediately ordered someone to search Yaxin Terrace, and one after another, they found cypress branches, handkerchiefs, and other physical evidence that did not favor Concubine Chu. They even found witnesses who had seen Concubine Chu at Yaxin Terrace. No matter how Huan Hua actually died, it was true that Concubine Chu had ordered someone to set fire to the palace and that she deliberately burned herself to deceive the emperor. She must have even killed someone. With these crimes, if the emperor had felt any bit of pity for Concubine Chu, it was evaporating completely. Before, he'd thought Concubine Chu was arrogant and failed to teach the second prince correctly, and that she and her son had become greedy and ambitious because he let it slip that he planned to make the second prince the crown prince. But he'd never imagined she could be such a vicious, cruel person. Concubine Chu fell to her knees. With all the evidence against her, she didn't even have a chance to defend herself. In front of everyone, the emperor demoted her to a commoner, banished her to the cold palace, and sent Luo Zhuisheng to the residence of the Marquis of An to reprimand him to his face. Neither Concubine Chu nor the Marquis of An could cause any more trouble now. Mu Tianming glanced smugly at Mu Tianxiao. This was exactly what he wanted, for the mother and son duo to be permanently dealt with so his position could be secured. The sixth prince responded with a shallow, obedient smile. Prince Jing couldn't stand Concubine Chu's wailing, so he bid goodbye to the emperor. The emperor was still interested in the little carp, but it clearly wasn't the time to examine this good omen, so the emperor asked Prince Jing to come to the palace another day to discuss it. As Prince Jing left, the sixth prince kept his gaze fixed on him, as though deep in thought. Prince Jing noticed his gaze and also noticed that the sixth prince kept one arm down, his hand hidden in his sleeve. He hadn't taken his hand out of his sleeve the whole time. Silently, Prince Jing raised an eyebrow. Mu Tianxiao smiled, and both hands were revealed as he clasped them together to bow at Prince Jing. "Fifth brother," he said gently, "take care." Seeing nothing wrong with his hands, Prince Jing nodded at him politely in turn. Li Yu went along with Prince Jing in his crystal bottle. Since Prince Jing had already taken him in and out of the palace several times, he recognized the path, and he realized that they weren't heading toward Prince Jing's manor after they left the palace. Prince Jing's determined profile was as sharp as a knife, and dozens of silent, black-robed guards followed him. Wang Xi looked solemn beside him, with the corners of his mouth curved downward. What were they going to do? The little carp was confused. He recalled that in the novel, Concubine Chu getting slapped in the face was mainly a plot point to showcase the showdown between the third prince and the second prince. Prince Jing wasn't actually present for it. In the novel, the fire only destroyed one room, and Huanhua didn't die. Concubine Chu was demoted, but wasn't sent to the back palace, so she was able to keep struggling for a little while longer. But in this new version of events, not only was Prince Jing there, he even passed news to the third prince, eliminating the nefarious Concubine Chu by the third prince's hand. Her end was much worse now than it was in the novel. On the surface, it seemed like the third prince and the sixth prince had won this bout, but the true winner was Prince Jing. Li Yu suddenly thought of Huanhua's death and started panicking. If she didn't commit suicide, then who killed her? The little carp glanced sneakily at Prince Jing. Why did Prince Jing have a murderous aura about him again? Could it be that he was the one who secretly killed Huanhua? He soon discovered the answer on his own. Prince Jing walked, traveling late into the night, carrying the crystal bottle with him as he took many twists and turns. At last, he stopped in front of a residence and waved his hand. The black-robed guards disappeared into the night behind him. Prince Jing found a place to hide and silently observed the house from afar. Loud sounds of cursing and reprimands came from the residence, as if someone was arguing. After a while, a man walked out angrily, surrounded by his assistants. Li Yu recognized him as Luo Ruisheng, the head eunuch. Luo Gonggong couldn't keep his anger off his face. The servants beside him tried to placate him by saying, "The Marquis of An even dares to talk back to you when you came under the Emperor's orders? He's truly a thoughtless fool. There's no way we can keep him anymore." Luo Ruisheng was quite angry, but he thought it was inappropriate for a follower of his to say something like that so bluntly. There's no need to ridicule him like that. In the end, he is still a prince. His followers didn't care. "Luo Gonggong, you're so worldly and experienced. Who cares about a fallen phoenix? He's nothing but a chicken without the emperor's favor." That was true. Luo Ruisheng laughed in cold contempt and didn't say anything else. So this is where the Marquis of An lived, Li Yu realized. The emperor had just ordered head eunuch Luo Ruisheng to reprimand him, which was why Luo Gonggong was here. Luo Gonggong and his assistants soon disappeared into the distance. Once they left, Prince Jing ordered his black-robed guards to surround the residence. He wrapped the chain of the crystal bottle tightly around his hand a few times, held it firmly, took a breath, and jumped onto the roof. Li Yu was startled, unprepared to suddenly become a flying fish. His tyrant master actually took his pet fish with him up to crouch on the Marquis of An's roof. He tried to look around, but it was too dark to see very much. He didn't know what Prince Jing was going to do, but it wasn't as if he could get out of the crystal bottle, so he had to accompany Prince Jing, curious as to what might follow next. Prince Jing kept holding the crystal bottle tightly with one hand as he gently uncovered a roof tile with the other. Dim candlelight from the house shone outward immediately. The little carp quickly swam closer. Was Prince Jing here to get a look at the Marquis of An at his lowest? He wanted to see too. Whether it was intentional or not, Prince Jing moved out of Li Yu's way. The little carp, who had just been swimming around wildly to try and get a better angle, stopped. He could finally see what was going on inside the house. The Marquis of An had been locked in his house for a long time. The floor was covered in a great variety of broken porcelain and tiles. There were no intact ornaments left. Mu Tianzhao sat in a red sandalwood chair, clutching his head in despair. Ever since he was banned from leaving his residence, he hadn't seen the emperor again. Now, there was news that Concubine Chu had been banished to the Cold Palace, and the emperor had even sent Luo Ruisheng just to scold him. Mu Tianzhao was born a prince. He'd never suffered like this before. His anger boiled up until he couldn't contain it anymore, and he argued with Luo Gonggong. Unfortunately, it was too late to regret it now. These days, he was not doing well. He often beat and scolded those around him, and his wife and children didn't dare approach him. There were only 1 or 2 servants with the courage to come and look after him. One of them, an older servant, brought over a bowl of soup and whispered some comforting words to Mu Tianzhao. but he only waved his hands, irritated, and started cursing at him loudly. The servant left quietly, not daring to stay for longer. Watching what was happening below, Li Yu felt a bit gratified when he saw that the second prince's usually clean-shaven face now sported a 5 o'clock shadow. However, Prince Jing didn't plan on just watching. He suddenly reached into his robes and took out an object. Li Yu was shocked when he glanced at it. That object was his long-lost fish pillow. The fish pillow was a reward for one of his quests and was made of special materials to make it look exactly like him. Most people couldn't even tell them apart unless they touched it. He'd already forgotten where he lost it. How did it end up in Prince Jing's possession? Thinking about Prince Jing quietly keeping his fish pillow and not returning it to him, Li Yu was speechless. Meanwhile, Prince Jing took out a string as thin as a strand of hair and tied it to the fish pillow's tail, then winked at the little carp, who was watching. The mischievous smile in Prince Jing's eyes clearly said he was about to pull off something fun, and Li Yu was just wondering what he was going to do when Prince Jing tossed the fish pillow into the room, keeping hold of the thin string. Whatever it was he was up to, it still wasn't clear. Li Yu quickly looked back into the room, only to see the fish pillow drop silently into the soup bowl. Since there was a string to control its descent, and Prince Jing's timing was impeccable, it made no noise, and Mu Tianzhao, still yelling and cursing, didn't notice it. After he finished cursing his old servant, Mu Tianzhao moved on to cursing out Luo Gongong. He felt a little thirsty, though, so he picked up the bowl on the table and took a sip without looking at it. When he finished, he suddenly noticed a particular gray fish floating in the bowl, a fish that always brought him bad luck. Terrified, he dropped the bowl on the ground. It wasn't me! It wasn't me! Don't come at me! Mu Tianzhao frantically shook his head, staring at the fish on the ground. The fish was unmoving, as if dead, and he was so frightened that he staggered backward. Realizing something, he started scratching at his throat violently, shouting wildly, "Someone! Anyone! Save me! Please save me!" Mu Tianzhao was too scared to look at the fish again and didn't dare stay in the room alone with it, blindly stumbling his way out of the room in panic. Why was his reaction so extreme? Li Yu didn't understand. He knew Mu Tianzhao hated him, but he was horrified when he saw the fish plush, frightened so badly he was screaming for help. This was way too dramatic. What, was the fish going to bite him? Unless... A light bulb went off in Li Yu's head. Looking at Mu Tianzhao's weird actions, was he the one who had poisoned the fish food and almost killed Xiongfeng when Xiongfeng nearly ate it? As soon as he saw the fish pillow, the Marquis of An thought it was a dead, poisoned fish coming back for revenge, and even thought that the soup he drank was poisoned. The Marquis of An was out of the loop. He didn't know that the carp meant for food was still alive and well. Li Yu finally understood what the Marquis of An was thinking, and also figured out why Prince Jing carried him up to the roof of the Marquis of An's residence to let the fish pillow down. He took a deep breath. If the Marquis of An wanted to harm the fish, then Prince Jing was probably getting revenge on his behalf. The little carp looked at the Marquis of An, who was yelling crazily down below, and then at the quiet Prince Jing next to him, and suddenly wanted to nuzzle his master. What a considerate and thoughtful fish owner! There was no way Prince Jing was the one who killed Huan Hua. Prince Jing could easily deal with the second prince himself. There was no need to go and murder a palace servant who didn't need to die in the first place. While the Marquis of An was hysterically running about, Prince Jing took the opportunity to reel in the fish pillow and put it away. Then he firmly grasped the crystal bottle and came back down from the roof. "Your Highness!" Wang Xi rushed over. It was his job to meet up with Prince Jing once he came back from his fishing expedition. The Marquis of An had completely fallen into disgrace. The time had come for him to repay the debt he owed to Prince Jing. Prince Jing began by scaring him. He had learned his lesson from how frightened Xiaoyu was after he killed the female assassin. He knew he couldn't give Xiaoyu a front seat to any real payback. in front of his gentle fish. His only retribution against the Marquis of An would be a good scare, and hopefully this would be enough to make Xiaoyu feel justice had been served. As for what followed, Prince Jing gestured at Wang Xi to do a clean job after he left. After Wang Xi had received the order, Prince Jing took his fish back to the manor. When Wang Xi felt his master was far enough away, he ordered the black-robed guards surrounding the area to make their move. Chaos descended the next morning in the Marquis of An's residence. Apparently, after he was reprimanded by the emperor, he was in a terrible mood and drank to relieve his anger. After he got drunk, he wandered around by himself and accidentally fell into his own pond. And when a servant finally found him and fished him out, he was already breathing out more than he was breathing in. The emperor was furious, as the Marquis of An clearly did this because he was upset with the emperor. Since he was still a prince, though, the emperor had the imperial physician treat him. The imperial physician was skilled, and the Marquis of An regained consciousness, but when he woke, he seemed quite insane. Once in a while, he would alternately mutter, "It wasn't me," or "It was me." Nobody could understand him. The emperor was thoroughly disappointed with his son and ordered him locked up in his manor so he wouldn't go out and frighten others. Though, with concubine Chu banished to the cold palace, nobody would dare be so thoughtless as to mention the Marquis of An in front of the emperor. Everyone had their loyal subjects, and the Marquis of An was no exception. A servant from his residence went to head eunuch Luo with some money to ask him to beg the emperor for mercy. Luo Zheishang agreed with a smile, but he just took the money without doing what he was asked. It was the Marquis of An's own fault for offending him. A criminal should look like a criminal. Meanwhile, Prince Jing had just returned to his manor with his fish when his servants brought him some good news. The new fish tank in the mansion had been under construction for a while, and after several days of hard work, the workers had finally finished. Li Yu was a little sleepy, but that went right out the window when he heard the news. He kept acting cute and blowing bubbles toward Prince Jing. What kind of fish tank did Prince Jing make for him? He'd heard it mentioned several times already. He really couldn't wait. When the carp spirit flicked his tail now, Prince Jing knew exactly what he wanted. With this new awareness, he wasn't particularly in a rush to release him from the crystal bottle, and instead took him personally to see the new fish tank. The barricades that originally surrounded the construction area in Prince Jing's manor were moved away, revealing what was hidden beneath. Li Yu made a little surprised fish noise, utterly taken aback. He wouldn't have realized if it wasn't shown to him directly, but all the ponds around the courtyard had been dug out and connected. If there wasn't a pond there before, a pond was made, and it formed a huge fish tank that was nearly as large as the entire manor. No, it could no longer be called a fish tank. The word pond was more appropriate. The fish pond was filled with clear, gurgling water. A small water wheel was built next to it, and there were guards every 10 steps around the circumference to stop people from approaching. Li Yu stared at his new tank, slightly stunned. It almost seemed endless. The rims of his eyes felt warm. Was all this just for him? He did grow larger, but Prince Jing had given him such a huge new fish tank. Sob, sob, sob. He was so moved. Prince Jing bent over and tilted the crystal bottle over to let the little carp swim into the new fish tank. But the little carp wouldn't come out of the bottle no matter what he did, so Prince Jing took him out himself. The little carp looked at him with his dark eyes and nuzzled his hand affectionately with his head. Prince Jing gave a slight smile, then put him into the water. This was his gift to Xiaoyu, and he hoped the little fish would like it. Prince Jing had felt nothing when he dealt with the Marquis of An, but the thick, murderous order he'd given off then was now gone. In its place was a slightly bashful mien. The little carp circled at Prince Jing's feet a couple of times with initial reluctance, then slowly swam away, gradually increasing in speed. Behind the fish, the water bloomed into crystal clear waves. This was the first time Liu had been in a pond since he transmigrated, and there was so much space for him to swim. He was a little cautious at first, but a breathtaking underwater scene suddenly caught his eye. This wasn't actually a normal fish pond. The meticulous and particular Prince Jing had ordered workers to dig out an underwater world just for his fish. On the underwater stone wall, luminous pearls were embedded in circles, brightening what would have been dark water if it were daytime. The rippling bottom of the pool was lined with rounded stones of different colors, and in the center was a group of buildings, mountains, rocks, and trees. They were carved from jade and scaled down from the real landscape. The little carp was stunned. He swam over to take it in and slowly realized that it was scenery outside Prince Jing's manor. The craftsmen were skilled, so the work was detailed. Everything from the roads and stalls to the pedestrians, the carriages and horses, even the cats and dogs were all depicted in jade. Since Prince Jing carried him around everywhere in the crystal bottle, Liu had always noticed the bustling, lively scenes outside the manor. He had been jealous with just the brief glances he was allowed. Now, his new fish tank had all of it, and it all belonged to him. Liu meandered around, entranced, as he used his fish tail to admiringly poke and prod at everything he passed. He couldn't leave the residence, but his love for excitement and exploration was thoroughly satisfied by this. At last, he swam to a lone building at the bottom of the pond. He thought it looked quite familiar. After some examination, he realized it was Prince Jing's quarters. He hadn't thought that his tyrant master would have his own room carved into the pond. Liu circled the building and found that the door could be opened outward. Clumsily, the little carp opened it with his mouth. In the courtyard, there was a man carved from jade wearing a hairpiece with neatly done hair, brocade robes, and a sword at his waist. The facial features weren't clearly carved, but Liu immediately realized that it was supposed to be Prince Jing. Among everyone he knew, Prince Jing was the only one who would dress like this. "Why are you alone? How sad." Liu knocked over the jade statue with a giggle, coiling around him unceremoniously. After he had his fill of playing around, he picked the jade statue up and put it back neatly. He remembered that he'd seen a little ornament stone in the shape of a fish on the stone wall underwater. There were actually a lot of stones like that, so Liu found one in no time, grabbed the corner of it, and yanked it off the stone wall with all his might. It went well. The fish dragged the fish-shaped stone to the jade statue and placed it right next to it, then closed the door. Done! The tyrant master wasn't alone anymore. Liu swam in an excited circle, then went to find his real master. Chapter 41. The Fish is Not for Sale. Prince Jing waited next to the fish pond, but he didn't see his playful fish return. Suddenly, he realized that his gift might have been a bit stupid. Would the carp spirit be so happy in the pond that he'd prefer to live there instead of staying by his side? After all, in the eyes of this fish, he couldn't even compare to a mouthful of food. There wasn't a chance he'd win against a new fish tank, right? Prince Jing hesitated for a while before he decided to enter the water himself to look for his heartless carp spirit. But right then, the water rippled and a fish head poked out of the middle, followed by the little carp quickly swimming over. So, the fish did have a conscience after all. Prince Jing wasn't upset anymore. As the little carp swam in circles happily below him, Prince Jing leaned over and patted his head. The little carp suddenly curled into a ball and rolled into his palm. What was going on? Prince Jing picked the fish up and checked him all over, afraid that the fish pond might have been constructed too hastily and that he'd been injured by some rough, unfinished edge. But his fish looked completely fine, lively and vigorous, unharmed. Prince Jing gave it some thought and decided to put the fish back into the crystal bottle. The carp spirit was very obedient, and he had no problem with the crystal bottle despite having just emerged from a huge, luxurious fish pond. Prince Jing took his fish back to his room and placed him in the fish tank there. The carp spirit still didn't object, and Prince Jing took it as a sign that the fish still wanted to live with him. The slight disappointment from earlier turned into a secret delight. The fish couldn't speak or express his thanks, but Prince Jing wasn't looking for that anyway. It was enough as long as he was willing to stay by his side. Since Xiaoyu had been busy the whole day, Prince Jing suspected he would fall asleep soon. But when he put his fish back, Xiaoyu was either pressed to the wall of the fish tank and gazing at him, or swimming around to follow his every footstep. Hurry, go to sleep. Prince Jing tapped the fish's head, and the obedient little fish actually clung onto his hand and wouldn't let go. Most of the time now, Prince Jing could understand what the carp spirit wanted, but occasionally he still wasn't sure. After a bit, the fish let go on his own and lay on his white stone bed. Prince Jing was quite tired as well. He lay down on his own bed and soon fell asleep. But the little carp, who'd been pretending to sleep, had been listening to his breathing and started to move again as soon as he noticed Prince Jing had drifted off. The tea bowls were still in his room, even though a new, huge fish tank had been built. Liu leaped in and out of them, following a familiar path to Prince Jing's bed. There was a red lotus tea bowl next to the pillow today, and the little carp carefully jumped into it. He didn't know how to express his gratitude. The tyrant master was too good to him. Not only did he avenge him, he built such a huge fish tank too. But there wasn't anything he could do for him in return. Liu gazed at his master's sleeping face for a while, but eventually his fishy senses started tingling and he just wanted to nuzzle him. But if he jumped over directly, he'd get a bunch of water on his face. What should he do? Perhaps, like a cat or dog, he could just carefully give his owner's face a friendly little kiss. It wasn't as if he hadn't done this sort of thing before, after all. Since Prince Jing was lying on his back, Liu picked the most good-looking part of his face, slid out of the bowl, and tried to plant his lips on it. But Prince Jing shifted suddenly, and Liu had to dodge out of his way. Prince Jing turned over on his side, and the handsomest part of his face disappeared into the pillow. Liu had lost his target and had to change course. He smirked. Since that part of his face was hidden, he would have to nuzzle his master's nose. The little carp opened his mouth and vigorously flapped his fins a couple of times as if he was about to take a big chomp. But in the end, he only gently brushed past Prince Jing's nose, his fishy lips pausing for a moment on the tip. He did it! Liu felt great, as if he'd just eaten several pieces of peach blossom pastry. Kissing Prince Jing's nose was a big move for Liu, and it was actually harder than kissing his face. Liu had to tilt his fish body while on the jade pillow to reach his master's nose, and if he missed, he would immediately slip. He was just priding himself on taking such excellent care, but his fins were slippery, and so was the jade pillow. There was no way to keep himself in that kind of position for a long time. His fin slipped as soon as he was finished, and he started to fall uncontrollably toward Prince Jing's face. His triumph was about to turn into a disaster. Liu couldn't stop himself, and in a last-ditch effort, he tried to push himself away with all the strength he could muster in his tail. When he was just an inch away from Prince Jing's face, his fish body stopped. To be precise, it was his fish tail that stood upright like a sturdy base, supporting his fish body. Huh? The little carp glanced at his own tail curiously. At such a critical moment, his tail became as hard as iron, most likely because of his new fish scales. He knew they were supposed to be strong, but he hadn't tried them out yet, and he was surprised that the tail could support his body like that. Saved, Liu was just about to jump back into his fish tank when Prince Jing, just an inch away from him, started to shift in his sleep again, his face following him. Before Liu realized the danger, his slippery fish body was pressed against something burning hot and soft. Uh-oh. He was sure he hadn't fallen into Prince Jing, but Prince Jing's lips were now pressed against him. If not for the other party's closed eyes, it really did seem like his scorching lips were kissing his fish belly, fins, and... Li Yu's tail, previously as hard as iron, suddenly turned limp as if it'd been burned. His whole body swayed as he leapt away, trembling. He was too panicked to clearly see where the tea bowl was, and for the first time, he somehow missed the bowl. Instead, he fell into the ground right next to it, flopping frantically a couple of times before he made it back in. Li Yu shoved his embarrassed head under his leaf blanket, his entire body almost smoking. Hurry up and calm down. Master was just sleeping. It didn't mean anything, the little fish kept telling himself. Meanwhile, the person on the bed had been listening to the fish's movements the entire time. I knew it. I'll reread that. Meanwhile, the person on the bed had been listening to the fish's movements the entire time. Only when the carp spirit finally made it into the crystal fish tank and stopped making any noise did Prince Jing reach out and touch the corner of his lips. It was the fish's fault for not absorbing essence properly. He'd actually woken up as soon as Xiaoyu jumped onto the bed, but he became impatient, waiting for him, and took the initiative instead. But the charming failure of a fish spirit escaped in the end. Prince Jing recalled the feeling of the fish against his face and slightly smiled. The next day, a fish and a human, each with their own ulterior motives, were both feeling a bit guilty. For some reason, the fish was still a soft little carp. He hadn't had a chance to turn into a human yet before an uninvited guest arrived at Prince Jing's manor. The heir to the house of Changle had been wondering about the new fish tank in Prince Jing's manor for a while. When he heard that it was finished, Xue wanted to be the first to take a look and join in on the fun. So as soon as it was drawn, he brought Xiongfang with him to visit. He was stunned by the sight of the manor's huge fish pond as soon as he entered. From what Ye Qinghuan had seen on his previous visits, he thought Prince Jing was sectioning out pieces of the ground in preparation for a few new ponds, but this was far beyond what he'd imagined. He didn't think that Prince Jing would make his entire manor into a pond for the fish. Ye was impressed, but also thought Prince Jing was a bit crazy. Ye Qinghuan let go of Xiongfang's leash so that he could have a private talk with Prince Jing. Xiongfang had never seen such a large pond before, and he was running along the edge of it when he saw the little carp having fun in the water. Li Yu noticed Xiongfang too. He remembered that he hadn't seen Xiongfang since his scales started changing, so he was afraid Xiongfang wouldn't recognize him. But not only did Xiongfang not bark at him, he also curiously reached his nose out toward Li Yu like always, wanting to poke him. Li Yu recalled that his scales should be strong enough to resist a dog's teeth now, so he suppressed his fear and stuck his head out of the water, letting Xiongfang gently nudge him. Finally getting his chance to poke the fish, Xiongfang started wagging his tail out of happiness and scampered around the entire pond. Of course he recognized his little carp friend. Dogs recognize things by scent. But just running around wasn't fun enough, so Xiongfang jumped into the pond with a splash and paddled to the fish. Li Yu splashed his face with water as a warning. "You can come down and play, but you can't knock over the house my master made for me." Fortunately, Xiongfang was obedient and only played with the fish, with no intention of diving to the bottom. He wanted to race the fish in the water, but obviously the little carp swam faster than he did, so soon left him far behind. Ye and Prince Jing both watched these events unfold. Ye clicked his tongue several times, and Prince Jing's face darkened a little. He thought Ye Qinghuan's dog was an eyesore and was about to ask Wang Xi to drag both Ye Qinghuan and his dog out of the manor. Completely unaware, Ye Qinghuan teasingly nudged Prince Jing's arm, his eyes sparkling like the water as he gazed at the pond. "Aren't you afraid we're going to lose him in such a big pond?" Prince Jing paused. The question came out of the blue, so it took him a moment to realize what Ye Qinghuan was asking. He smiled slightly and shook his head. He might have been worried before, but he knew now that Xiaoyu wouldn't do that. The fish and the dog were having fun in the pond. Prince Jing walked over, and the fish, who had disappeared to who knew where, immediately appeared on his own and swam over to Prince Jing's feet, flicking his tail toward him intimately. What flattery! Unbelievable. Ye Qinghuan refused to lose and walked over to Xiongfang with secret anticipation. but Xiong Feng was staring at himself in the water and had no time to pay attention to him. That's enough, he thought in despair. I'm about to lose everything, including my underwear. Ye Shitze, who had come to see the fish tank and was outdone again, angrily led Xiong Feng away. Ye Qinghuan had just left when the third prince, Mu Tianming, came knocking on the door. Although he'd always wanted to win over Prince Jing, he didn't visit often, and Prince Jing treated others quite coldly. The last time Mu Tianming had visited was to attend the banquet that the emperor ordered Prince Jing to host. That time, he'd wanted to plet Chu Yanyu around Prince Jing, but until now he hadn't even dared step through the door for fear of Prince Jing's refusal. Mu Tianming had a purpose for his visit this time too. He used to simply enjoy observing the fish Prince Jing raised as entertainment, but he was shocked to learn the fish had started growing golden scales. The emperor even called it an auspicious sign. That caught the attention of the third prince. Since the fish also contributed a lot to the defeat of concubine Chu, Mu Tianming was willing to believe that the fish was a good omen. Mu Tianming, who desperately wanted to be named the crown prince, naturally wanted to take this good omen for himself to get in the good graces of the emperor. Now that the biggest obstacle before him, the second prince, was gone, and the sixth prince was on his side and wouldn't compete against him, the throne would be his, sooner or later. Things were different now. The support of Prince Jing and the house of Changle was no longer important to the third prince. Instead, he started to become wary of Prince Jing. Despite wanting the fish, he didn't want to take rash action, leaving himself open to retaliation and a loss of reputation. Instead, he'd employ peaceful measures before resorting to force. It was just the fish, after all, so Prince Jing wouldn't make a fuss, right? Once Wang Xi had received Prince Jing's order, he brought the third prince to Ninghui Hall, which was used to entertain guests. Mu Tianming brought a lot of his men, all carrying boxes and chests, and placed them in Ninghui Hall. At Mu Tianming's order, all the boxes were opened, revealing the gold and silver within. Li Yu might have a huge fish tank now, but he still liked the crystal bottle Prince Jing took him around in. When he heard the third prince had come, there was no way Li Yu was going to miss the show. He jumped into the crystal bottle as soon as possible and flopped around. Prince Jing granted his wish. It wasn't like the third prince could do anything in his own manner. But when the third prince presented the boxes full of gold and silver, the shameless little carp sank right to the bottom. Li Yu had never seen so much gold and silver in his life. What was the third prince doing? Mu Tianming got right to the point. Fifth brother, I'd like to make a deal with you. Your fish is quite nice, and I like it. Are you willing to part with it? Mu Tianming smiled and pointed at the boxes his people had laid out on the ground. If this much silver and gold isn't enough, I can add more until you're satisfied. How about it? Holy shit! Mu Tianming wanted to buy him from his tyrant master? Illegal! Not allowed! Li Yu found himself desperately praying in his heart. Don't do it! Gold and silver were great, but that didn't mean he wanted to be exchanged for them. Prince Jing treated him very well, after all. He didn't want to leave him. The little carp quickly checked Prince Jing's reaction. The veins on Prince Jing's forehead were visibly throbbing, and Li Yu could tell that the tyrant was really angry. Seeing this, the little carp calmed down right away and continued watching to see how his master was going to reject the brazen third prince. Speaking of which, the third prince had never given him a second glance, so why did he suddenly want to buy him? It must be because the emperor said he was auspicious. The little carp hated calculating people who only acted based on what others said. After the third prince proposed this deal, Prince Jing glanced at Wang Xi with a cold expression. Wang Xi didn't care about any third or second prince. He only recognized His Highness Prince Jing. Prince Jing clearly wasn't happy, so Wang Xi loudly said, "There's no need to continue, Your Highness. My prince won't sell his fish." Mu Tianming, surprised, said, "Perhaps you think the price I offered was not enough? What about 10,000 taels of gold and 100,000 taels of silver?" He was becoming increasingly uncertain. It was just a fish. Even if it was auspicious, this was way too expensive. But if it could help him become the crown prince, then so be it. Li Yu didn't think he'd be worth so much. He disliked the third prince, but he couldn't help but wiggle around proudly. If looks could kill, the third prince would have died a couple thousand times over already. Wang Xi glanced at Prince Jing's icy expression and said, "It's no matter the price. The fish is His Highness's beloved pet. So even if you come with millions of gold tails or tens of millions of silver tails, His Highness won't sell him." Li Yu was super moved. In the eyes of the tyrant, he was worth more than a mountain of gold. The little carp finally understood the full meaning of priceless pet fish. Prince Jing definitely wouldn't give much respect to someone who tried to poach his fish, so he had Wang Xi kick the third prince and all of his gold and silver out. Mu Tianming hadn't expected to be treated this way and left with a sour look on his face. At last, the annoying third prince was gone. Li Yu happily flicked his tail at his master, wanting Prince Jing to take him to the big pond to play, but Prince Jing turned his head to the side and wouldn't look at him. What now? The little carp wasn't sure why his master was suddenly mad at him, so he could only cutely wiggle at him. Prince Jing wanted to be stone-hearted for once, but the little carp was too good at being cute, and he couldn't resist pulling the cute fish over to pet him until he trembled. It had been upsetting when the carp spirit stopped swimming the moment he saw all the gold and silver the third prince brought. In a fit of anger, Prince Jing ordered all the workers to replace the white stones that the little carp liked to sleep on with rounded silver stones, and the leaf blanket with a handkerchief made of gold silk embroidered with aquatic plants. Overnight, Li Yu suddenly found that his bed and blanket had become shiny. "Oh, master, I love you to death!" the little carp yelled inwardly, hugging the blanket and refusing to let go as he rolled around on his bed. Chapter 42. Teaching the Fish to Write. The system had given Li Yu a break for a while now, but that night, as he rolled around in his gold-embroidered blanket, at last understanding what it meant to be treated like a priceless pet fish, it finally spoke up again. "Congratulations, user. The assessment of your main mission has been completed. The user can enter the next main mission." Is it finally time to move on? Li Yu wondered. He had never worried about the assessment. The master tyrant treated him very well, so he had full confidence that he could continue with the main mission. Although he had accepted the Koi side quest, he'd been leaving it alone and hadn't made any progress because the prompt was so strange. It'd been a while since he'd done a main mission, and he actually kind of missed it. Li Yu immediately entered the system to check. Just as the system said, he could click on the new main mission called Tyrant's Pet Fish for Revitalizing the Family. He thought the name of the mission was strange, but he did sort of remember it from the first time he ever entered the system. Didn't the system say the direction of the main missions would be determined by the assessment? He didn't see anything different from before. Li Yu clicked on the Revitalizing mission. This main mission was similar to Priceless Pet Fish and had several steps to carry out. The prompt was to improve the tyrant and pet fish's life. The first step of the mission was indulge with the tyrant? Hold on. How come it felt like the fish scamming system had become even more of a scammer after the vacation? What in the world was the connection between revitalization and indulging? And what was indulging supposed to mean? Did that mean he had to go drinking with the tyrant? Li Yu had sampled green plum wine before, so he knew that he got drunk easily. He'd definitely do something he regretted if he got drunk again. He felt like he was getting scammed by the mission's drink requirement. "Can't I just skip this mission?" "Certainly," agreed the system. "Would you rather become fish bones or fish ash?" Forget it. Neither of those options were appealing, so he'd have to just do as he was told and carry out his mission. To pump himself up, he looked at the reward first. This time, it wasn't double stats or a new skill, but a mysterious reward. Obtaining one of the tyrant's secrets. Li Yu's first impulse was to reject it entirely. He didn't really want to know any of Prince Jing's secrets. That was his private business. What's more, he was a transmigrated fish. He already knew a lot about Prince Jing from the novel, so this reward was a bit useless to him. Liu Yu decided to push his luck despite the earlier threat. Is there no fish plush like last time? It would be nice if he could have another plush. He transformed often now, and it wasn't good to leave the tank empty, so he really wanted another one. Prince Jing hadn't returned the plush from before, and that one was different from his current size and shape anyway. The fish scamming system had probably never met a user who wanted to pick out their own reward like that. After a period of silence, the system replied, "According to the user's suggestion, the main reward of revitalizing the family has been updated. Please take a look." Liu Yu was surprised. Would the system really make changes because of something he said? He went to check the Indulge mission. Sure enough, there was a fish pillow listed as a reward now. He was extremely happy about this change. On a whim, Liu Yu had a thought. Since the rewards could be changed, could this indulging be changed as well? How was a fish supposed to indulge with his tyrant master? Sob, 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 it was much too difficult. This time, the fish scamming system stayed silent. Okay, I see right through you. You can change anything except things that involve scamming fish. Is that it? Liu Yu was kicked out of the system and, still wrapped in his gold blanket, started to think about how he could indulge with Prince Jing. If they had to drink, then there had to be wine, right? While the little carp was wondering how he was going to get hold of some wine to complete his mission, chaos descended outside. A couple of thieves snuck into Prince Jing's manor in the middle of the night and made it to the wall before they were caught by Wang Gong and the guards. Ever since the fish pond was finished, the security around Prince Jing's manor had tightened. When the third prince left with a sullen look on his face after his offer to buy the fish was refused, Wang Xi kept his guard up and reminded the guards to keep an eye out at night. But he didn't think thieves would actually come. He immediately reported it to Prince Jing. Prince Jing glanced at the once again unconscious fish in the fish tank. He used to think that his fish was sick every time this happened, but now he surmised that the carp spirit was meditating. Prince Jing decided it wasn't necessary to distract Xiaoyu with this information, as he would be protecting him anyway. When the thieves were brought before Prince Jing, all tied up, they weren't willing to admit who they took orders from. The guards found a couple fish nets on them, though, making their purpose very clear. But the thieves hadn't been aware that the fish they were ordered to steal didn't sleep in the fish pond. Wang Xi hated these thieves as much as he liked Master Fish. "It must be the third prince," he said, teeth gritted. "He wanted to steal the fish since he couldn't buy it." But the thieves refused to confess, and the fish nets alone weren't enough to prove that it was the third prince. Wang Xi suggested torture. Prince Jing thought for a moment, then glanced at Wang Xi sternly and meaningfully. He immediately understood, ordering the guards to take the thieves to the imperial governmental office and interrogate them thoroughly. If Prince Jing's manor was broken into, they should report the case to the government office and leave the interrogation to them. That was the proper way to do things. If they took matters into their own hands, someone might take the chance to retaliate. Of course, though, after the thieves arrived at the government office, Prince Jing's manor could give a few suggestions as to how to make them confess as soon as possible. The sixth and third princes were discussing the latest issue at the third prince's manor. Mu Tianxiao knew that Mu Tianming had visited Prince Jing to try and convince him to sell his fish. Mu Tianxiao couldn't agree with this move. Instead of trying to make the emperor happy through grand actions, they should just do a good job on the tasks the emperor gave them. But even though Mu Tianming trusted him, he didn't listen to everything Mu Tianxiao said, so Mu Tianming made the final decision himself, and Mu Tianxiao couldn't do anything about it. Fine. Mu Tianming had sent people to steal the fish after failing to buy it. But then he failed to steal the fish, and his people were arrested as soon as they entered Prince Jing's manor. Mu Tianxiao was speechless. All that trouble for a fish that His Majesty might forget about tomorrow? Of course it's worth it. Mu Tianming was stubborn. When Prince Jing rudely kicked him out of his manor, it became a bigger issue to him than a mere pet fish. The third prince thought Prince Jing was only making it hard on himself, trying to make an enemy out of him even though he was close to becoming the crown prince. Imperial brother, it's best to stop sending people. If Prince Jing finds out. Mu Tianxiao tried to convince him, but the third prince brushed him off. What are you afraid of? My people won't incriminate me. They'll stay silent. Why are you so afraid? Even if Prince Jing suspects me, what can he do? If he does anything untoward to my people, I'll have the censorer punish him for abusing his powers. Let's see if he can even keep his title of prince. Incredible. Mu Tianxiao rubbed his temples in stress. All the same, it's not good that Prince Jing caught them. You should stop trying to steal the fish. Mu Tianming clearly didn't want to give up. So you think a mute should have an auspicious sign instead of you or me? Of course not. Mu Tianxiao smiled and gave him a look. Since it's an auspicious sign, I'm sure Father will ask the Imperial Astrological Bureau about it. The Imperial Astrological Bureau? Mu Tianming's eyes shone. This could indeed be a way to get rid of Prince Jing. But Father himself called it an auspicious sign. Even the Imperial Astrological Bureau might not refute him. Why would they need to refute it? Mu Tianxiao's warm expression didn't change as he asked, smiling, Has third brother forgotten the theory of too far is as bad as not enough? Mu Tianming paused for a second before he understood what the sixth prince meant, and he started laughing wildly. As the sixth prince predicted, the emperor summoned the Imperial Astrological Bureau officials not long after, and the third prince made his move according to the sixth prince's suggestion. There weren't many Imperial Astrological Bureau officials, but they were so important that a single word from them could sway a situation. Prince Jing naturally had a few of his own people planted in such an important department. Prince Jing also had selfish motives when he took his fish to greet the emperor. Xiaoyu had changed a lot, and he might change in the future too. News of it would reach the emperor sooner or later, and Prince Jing wanted to let him know preemptively so that he could find an excuse for Xiaoyu to cover up the fact that he was a Yao. If things didn't go well, Prince Jing was also prepared for the bureau to speak with the emperor. However, the emperor himself believed that Xiaoyu's new golden scales were a good omen, which saved Prince Jing a lot of trouble. Prince Jing had guessed that the emperor would eventually consult the Imperial Astrological Bureau and ask them to cooperate, so when the third prince made his move, Prince Jing caught wind of it soon after. Mu Tianming was so vicious that he wanted the bureau to tell the emperor that the golden scaled fish was showing signs of transforming into a dragon. In this dynasty, only the emperor could use the dragon pattern and call himself the true dragon and son of heaven. If a fish raised by a prince looked like it might turn into a dragon, the emperor would definitely put his guard up. When that happened, not only would Prince Jing be in trouble, it would be hard for anyone associated with him to escape from disaster, especially Xiaoyu. Luckily, he'd received the news beforehand and wouldn't let that happen. The third prince ordered someone to invite a senior monk in case the emperor questioned the Imperial Astrological Bureau. That way, he'd have two separate forces speaking in his favor. But Prince Jing wasn't going to back down either. He wrote a letter and had Wang Xi send it out immediately. He predicted that another storm was coming, but he'd protect Xiaoyu no matter what. After he dealt with the serious business, Prince Jing returned to his room, only to see a figure he'd been waiting for. Xiaoyu had transformed into a human and was wearing a blue silk robe embroidered with gold branches. He was humming an unknown melody as he bent over to smooth out the bed. Prince Jing stared at him from far away, wanting to approach but afraid of disturbing him. So he just appreciated Xiaoyu's figure as the young man hummed the tune. Xiaoyu was still the same as when they first met, spirited and lively. Every young man and woman he'd met before all tied their waist sashes tightly, but Xiaoyu didn't seem to know how. His was tied casually in a messy knot, hanging loose around his hips. A bare hint of the outline of his slim waist was visible. Prince Jing could have easily wrapped one arm around it. It was like a delicate willow that could snap at any moment. Prince Jing acknowledged this was a bit over the top, but his mind still automatically made this comparison. Further down, concealed beneath the blue robe, was a slightly raised, round... Prince Jing looked away immediately. "Your Highness, you're back!" Li Yu had noticed the movement behind him and smiled as he ran over to bow to him. Since he got back from the palace, he'd been carefully watching how the servants in the manor greeted the prince, and he performed one that looked about the same. He turned into a human this time because he had promised to stay in Prince Jing's manor and help him take care of his fish, so he had to show his face in front of Prince Jing occasionally to show that he was actually working, even if he was just feeding himself. Li Yu was extremely grateful that Prince Jing had made such a huge fish pond for him, but fish couldn't talk, so he couldn't express his thanks in a way other than giving him a little fish kiss. And even though he'd transformed into a human and could talk now, Prince Jing didn't know he was a fish, so if he casually thanked Prince Jing on behalf of the fish, the prince might treat him like a monster. All Li Yu could do was tidy up the room after feeding himself as an expression of silent thanks. But Prince Jing's room was always kept very clean. Li Yu looked around the whole room and couldn't find anything to improve. In the end, the only thing he could do was mess up the bed and make it again. He didn't expect to see Prince Jing after he'd completed this one single task. Seeing the fish in its human form made most of Prince Jing's anger toward the third prince disappear. He stepped forward and grabbed Li Yu's hand, dragging him along with him. There was something he'd wanted to do for a long time. Li Yu was startled to be suddenly whisked away, but silently cautioned himself that when he was a fish, he couldn't go against his master, and when he was a human, he couldn't go against a prince. With Li Yu in tow, Prince Jing quickly arrived at his table and had him sit down. Li Yu was a little panicked. Was he going to ask him questions again? To be honest, one of the reasons Li Yu transformed into a human this time was because he wanted to find out where the wine was in Prince Jing's manor. Green plum wine was hard to get your hands on, so if he was going to indulge, he needed to find where the normal wine was first. Then he could grab a jar, mix it with some water, and somehow make Prince Jing drink it with him. If he diluted it first, he wouldn't embarrass himself too badly, right? Li Yu had a plan in mind. He couldn't contradict or debate with the tyrant. He'd just pretend he was still a fish, obediently listening to what Prince Jing wanted him to do. Prince Jing laid out some paper and a brush, then handed an ink stick and inkstone to Li Yu. Li Yu laughed, startled. Your Highness, do you want me to grind ink? Prince Jing nodded lightly. So, he wants me to grind ink for him first before I answer questions. Huh! Li Yu was complaining internally, but he still ground the ink very seriously. Soon, the thick black ink appeared. Li Yu put down the ink stick and thoughtlessly rubbed his nose, leaving behind a smear of ink on the tip of his nose without noticing. This reminded Prince Jing of the time Xiaoyu was covered in ink stains, and he couldn't help the upward twitch of his lips. After Li Yu ground the ink, Prince Jing gave him a brush. He doesn't want me to answer questions. He wants me to write something? Li Yu rolled up his sleeves. He clutched the brush awkwardly, almost like he was holding chopsticks. Please let me know what you want me to write, Your Highness. And it'd be best if I could get a reward, like a jar of wine or something. I was just worrying what kind of excuse I'd need to get one. His crude grip surprised Prince Jing. No wonder the brush he used last time had frayed. But Prince Jing didn't judge Xiaoyu for not knowing how to write. He got up and stood behind him. Confused, Li Yu stared at him curiously. Prince Jing tried his hardest not to look at Xiaoyu's pale, exposed wrists as he reached out to cover the hand that was holding the brush with his own. He gently encircled Xiaoyu in his arms and turned him slightly to correct his awkward posture. Li Yu blushed, very flustered. He wasn't illiterate, but he didn't know how to use the brushes they had in ancient times. Prince Jing was probably just teaching him how to hold a brush and write, but this was way too close. Prince Jing's hand was holding his. Prince Jing's arms were supporting him, and he could feel his warm breath on his ears. When he looked back, all around him, up, down, left, right, Prince Jing was surrounding him. One of Li Yu's ears went completely red. He thought uneasily. This is just a normal lesson. Don't think anything crazy. Prince Jing's calligraphy is quite good and he's willing to teach me. Don't waste his time. Prince Jing held his hand just like that and taught him how to write a proper, correct fish character. Writing wasn't that hard after all. Before long, Liu was completely immersed in his scrawlings. If he was in fish form, his tail would have confidently pointed up to the sky. He didn't realize until he turned back into a fish that he'd forgotten to ask for a reward. But Prince Jing had been teaching him how to write the entire time, so it's not like he could ask for a reward. Liu was a little embarrassed. It seemed that Prince Jing had expertly thwarted his plans. Chapter 43. Fish Protecting Master. The emperor summoned Prince Jing to the palace again, and this time he specifically insisted that Prince Jing bring his fish. Liu didn't know about the third prince's plan or Prince Jing's counterplans, but since it was his first time being mentioned in an imperial edict, he was quite nervous. He jumped onto the crystal bottle cooperatively, waiting to be put inside. Prince Jing's expression was a little dark, but he patted the fish's head gently. Whatever was troubling him, it wasn't Liu. Liu recalled that the same hand had intimately held his own while teaching him how to write, so he hid away shyly. It wasn't long before his fishy nature took over, though, and he came back out wanting to be pet again. He could tell that Prince Jing was in a bad mood. He didn't know why, but he hoped Prince Jing would feel better soon. Xiaoyu asking for pets finally made Prince Jing smile a little. After he petted the fish, Prince Jing brought him into the palace as the edict commanded. Outside of Tianqing Palace, they were greeted personally by head eunuch Luo. When they entered the palace, they saw the emperor sitting on the throne with several other people dressed like officials. Strangely enough, the third and sixth princes were also there. Liu was confused. Last time, when there was a fire in the palace, the third and sixth princes made a trip to the palace to check on the emperor. But why were they here now? The third prince was rash, while the sixth prince was devious. Together, they couldn't be underestimated. As soon as Prince Jing walked into the palace with his fish, the two princes' gaze turned to him, making the fish a little nervous. As a result, Liu couldn't stop darting glances back over toward them. The emperor smiled when he saw Prince Jing. Tianchi, good timing. Since your fish is growing golden scales, I had the Imperial Astrological Bureau do a reading. So, that's what was going on. Liu nodded to himself. The emperor had summoned him because of the whole auspicious thing. It would be difficult to convince the general populace that this fish was auspicious just because the emperor said so. After all, it would be a bit ridiculous for the emperor to declare a sign of auspiciousness for himself. But if the Imperial Astrological Bureau confirmed it, then Liu would be the real deal. The emperor had just finished speaking when a solemn official came out, spouting a lot of official language that Liu couldn't understand, which ended with, "Congratulations, Your Majesty. A fish growing golden scales is truly a rare auspicious sign. We took this in conjunction with the celestial phenomena that has occurred recently, and the Ziwei star is slowly rising and shining dazzlingly. This means that our empire is peaceful and the people competent. Everything is progressing smoothly. This is all beneficial to both our empire and Your Majesty." The official was praising him with such refined language, the little carp couldn't help but raise his tail proudly. He'd always thought that astrologers might be highly adept at saying exactly what the emperor wanted to hear. His status as an auspicious sign was practically a foregone conclusion. The emperor's unease over the fire in Zhongshui Palace had vanished from his heart, and he nodded, smiling. "Very good. Those are my thoughts as well." The Imperial Astrological Bureau officials received a sizable reward and thanked him, satisfied. "Royal father, is that it?" The third prince had waited for a while, and this was the conclusion he got? Wasn't the Imperial Astrological Bureau supposed to say that a fish growing gold scales was a sign of impending dragon transformation? Why didn't the people he planted in the bureau do what he wanted? Confused, the emperor asked, "That's it. What else would there be? It sounds as if you believe there should be more." No, that's not what I meant." By now, the third prince had realized that something had probably gone wrong, but he refused to just let go of this opportunity. He clenched his teeth and said, "Royal father, I'm unaware with how the Imperial Astrological Bureau operates. Does only one official do the reading, or is it several? If it's just one person, is it possible for them to miss something?" Mu Tianming thought the problem must just be that his people weren't given the opportunity to meet the emperor, so if they just switched the official making the announcement, everything would go as planned. The person who had just congratulated the emperor was the director of the Imperial Astrological Bureau, named Sun Simiao. Director Sun smiled at Mu Tianming. "Your Highness, that's a strong accusation. Reading the stars for His Majesty and the Empire is an event of utmost importance, and the result you just heard was the conclusion that the entire Imperial Astrological Bureau came to. If your Highness doesn't trust me, the answer will remain the same even if you ask for someone else." Li Yu was a bit startled by the third prince. Why did he suddenly ask for an alternate opinion when everything was fine? He felt there must be sinister motives at work. Alarmed, his whole body shook, and Prince Jing reached into the crystal bottle to touch his back with his finger, stroking him from time to time as if to comfort and calm him down. Li Yu, naturally, was easily soothed by his tyrant master. The third prince wasn't anyone important. He was just cannon fodder, while Prince Jing had the protagonist's halo and was destined to be the next emperor. He was already piggybacking off of Prince Jing, so he had nothing to worry about. One had to be skilled to work at the Imperial Astrological Bureau. Sun Simiao wasn't high in rank, but his words still held considerable weight in front of the emperor. When the third prince questioned Director Sun for no reason, he even managed to respond graciously. The emperor trusted Sun Simiao, so he felt the third prince was behaving immaturely. "Tianming," he scolded him sternly, "don't criticize when you don't remember how the bureau works." Scolded, the third prince lowered his head and gave the sixth prince a pointed side look. Mu Tianxiao immediately understood and stepped forward to speak up. "Royal father, my brother isn't talking nonsense. We heard a commoner's child singing a nursery rhyme that contradicted what the Imperial Astrological Bureau said. We were afraid that we'd misunderstood the nursery rhyme, so we had some senior monks come and take a look." When the emperor heard the words nursery rhyme, his heart skipped a beat. He stared at the sixth prince. "What nursery rhyme?" "There are words and phrases that are blasphemous, so I dare not repeat them. Please take a look at this instead." The sixth prince took out a piece of paper he'd prepared from his robes and handed it to Luo Ruisheng to give to the emperor. When the emperor received the paper, he read it carefully. Though his expression didn't change, Li Yu could tell that a cold atmosphere had settled around him. What was on the paper? Why did it make the emperor so unhappy? It wouldn't be a false claim like 3 generations of the Tang dynasty later, there will be a female leader with the last name Wu, right? After the emperor read it, he calmly gestured at head eunuch Luo to pass the paper to Prince Jing. When the paper landed in Prince Jing's hands, he opened it and his eyes swept over the words. He read quickly, but historical characters were difficult for Li Yu to decipher, so he only saw the phrase, "Golden scales do not belong at the pond, but will climb into the sky as a dragon." Wait, what? He wasn't an expert at ancient Chinese, but he could tell that these words were just trying to scapegoat him. The innocent fish! It wasn't just trying to blame him, it also implicated Prince Jing. On the surface, it was saying that the fish could turn into a dragon, but wasn't it actually referring to Prince Jing ascending to the throne? Prince Jing would indeed ascend to the throne in the end, but where did this nursery rhyme come from? Were they afraid the emperor wouldn't make the connection to Prince Jing? The emperor was the head of state, after all. Even if he was sympathetic to Prince Jing, he couldn't ignore this provocation. "Tianchi, what do you think?" The emperor calmly asked Prince Jing. Right now, nobody knew what the emperor was thinking. Mu Tianming and Mu Tianxiao only hoped that the emperor would become wary of Prince Jing. Once Prince Jing had discovered the sixth prince's dangerous plan, however, he had someone secretly follow the sixth prince and discovered by chance that the sixth prince had been sending people to teach children nursery rhymes. Even though they were just nursery rhymes, Prince Jing was prepared. He calmly glanced at Wang Xi. Wang Xi stepped forward and said in place of his master, "Your Majesty, this is complete nonsense. His Highness is also confused as to why such a rhyme was spread amongst the people with the intention of ruining the relationship between a father and son. His Highness implores your Majesty to conduct a thorough investigation to see when this rhyme was spread. If it was just the past few days..." The emperor had only recently discovered that Prince Jing's fish was changing scales, so it was possible that someone was deliberately taking advantage of this incident. The emperor gave it some thought and nodded. "What Prince Jing said is reasonable. I also intend to do this." He didn't get angry at Prince Jing over the nursery rhyme. Instead, he ordered his imperial guards to investigate and find out when it was first heard and who it had originated from. The attempts to frame Prince Jing continued to fail. The third prince anxiously glanced at the sixth prince, who looked calm on the surface but was sweating a little on the inside. This was truly a devious move the sixth prince had come up with, but it backfired since the emperor didn't pay attention to the nursery rhyme itself. He was more interested in when the nursery rhyme first appeared, which was something that could be easily investigated and found out. It was then that the eminent monks that the sixth prince had summoned arrived. When he saw the row of monks, Liu Yu, who'd been caught off guard and wasn't operating at full capacity, remembered that there was a similar plot in the novel where monks were involved. Thanks to a little butterfly named Liu Yu flapping his wings all over the palace, the original plot was now a mess. In the novel, when the sixth prince and Prince Jing were fighting for the throne, a monk was ordered to lie to the emperor to frame Prince Jing. However, the rumor in the novel was Prince Jing was born a mute and is therefore inauspicious. Now, instead, it was a fish growing golden scales would turn into a dragon? It was, of course, nonsense. It wasn't rare for a fish to have golden scales. For example, koi almost always had golden scales. The emperor himself had many koi in his own lotus pond, so why would a carp that was meant to be food transform into a dragon before them? That was a logical argument, but it couldn't be used to convince the emperor. Liu Yu thought to himself, since these were both rumors thought up by the sixth prince, they should be the same in principle. Would the same flaw appear here? In the novel, the sixth prince framed Prince Jing too hastily and couldn't find any trusted eminent monks to help him. Most monks weren't foolish enough to get involved in a conflict between princes. Thus, the monks he found were all fakes. They had been freshly shaven, and they didn't even have any precept scars. With this in mind, Liu Yu stared at the monk in front of him unwaveringly, trying to see if anything was off. Since he was staring so diligently, he slowly noticed that the monk would use his neck to rub his collar occasionally. The movement stood out. Liu Yu suddenly realized that if he had shaved his head in a hurry, there would be itchy little hairs left behind, and they must be making him uncomfortable. The sixth prince had brought fake monks this time as well. As long as they could expose the fake monks in front of the emperor, no matter how eloquently they spoke, there was no way the emperor would believe them. Liu Yu had thought it through. He was going to splash some water onto Prince Jing again and get them both out of there. But the sixth prince didn't give Prince Jing any time to breathe at all. He hurriedly told the emperor, "Royal father, the investigation into the nursery rhyme needs time, and it may be wrong. I invited these eminent monks, so why don't we have them examine fifth brother's fish instead?" Though the emperor had ordered the imperial guards to investigate the nursery rhyme, a seed of doubt had been planted in his heart all the same. It wouldn't hurt to have the monks take a look at the fish, so he nodded in agreement. But the emperor didn't explicitly say that Prince Jing had to hand over the fish to the monks. Prince Jing's hand tightened on the crystal bottle's handle. Wang Xi knew what Prince Jing was thinking, and he boldly said to the monks, "You don't have to move. His Highness will hold the crystal bottle and show you the fish." The emperor knew Prince Jing cared about his fish a lot, and the monks could see the fish perfectly well like this. The emperor felt a little bad for doubting Prince Jing, besides, so he silently allowed it. Liu Yu didn't have the time to find an opportunity to tell Prince Jing. The sixth prince would probably be the first to refuse if he tried to make a long-term plan as he did before. Besides, the fake monks were right in front of him. Still, there was no way Liu Yu would let the monks alienate the emperor from Prince Jing by spouting nonsense about golden scales turning into a dragon. Prince Jing could suggest the emperor investigate the nursery rhyme because it was the first time the emperor had heard of such rumors, and he might not believe it right away. But if the monks said the same thing here and now, even lies could be believed if repeated enough times. Would the emperor still trust Prince Jing then? Liu Yu was with Prince Jing all the time, so he knew him well. Prince Jing had no disrespectful intentions. The father-son relationship they had was troubled and hard-won to begin with. It shouldn't be challenged like this. The most urgent thing was to expose these fake monks right here. As soon as they left the palace, they'd be hard to track down. There were opportunities, even if he had to take a risk. While Prince Jing was walking toward the leading monk with his fish, letting them get a look, Liu furiously slammed into the side of the crystal bottle facing the monk. His fish body strength had gone through several boosts from the system and was quite a few times stronger than before. Liu put all his strength into it. There was a loud crack, and a huge hole was punched through the bottle. The little carp immediately flew toward the lead monk. The monk never expected the fish to emerge from the crystal bottle like that. Shocked, he instinctively raised his hands to block him, but it was too late. The little carp soared over his hands and landed with a smack on his shoulder. In the chaos, the system made a noise, but Liu didn't care about whatever mission had been updated. He'd been waiting with his tail raised, aimed and ready. As soon as he landed on the monk's shoulder, his tail swept outward. He intended to sweep off the monk's hat. If that happened, he was sure that Prince Jing would be able to realize that the monks were imposters. Liu was going to expose them. He no longer cared about the mission or how blasphemous it was for a carp meant to be food to sweep a monk's hat off in front of the emperor. He didn't have any time to think. All he wanted was to protect Prince Jing by proving the sixth prince was trying to frame him. The monk was so frightened by the threatening fish that his mouth gaped, his hat fell to the ground, and he forgot to cover his head. "Royal father!" The third prince and sixth prince shouted in unison as they watched the fish break out of the bottle and knock the hat off the monk's head. Prince Jing, meanwhile, had been keeping an eye on Xiaoyu. As soon as he approached the monk, the carp spirit had started anxiously swimming around in the crystal bottle, so Prince Jing assumed something must be wrong. Clearly, the fish wanted to communicate something important. Prince Jing had made his own assumptions, but he didn't think the carp spirit would ignore his own safety and leap directly onto the monk. The carp spirit had broken out of the bottle, but Prince Jing wouldn't let anything happen to his fish. He had to deal with any loose ends. Most of the fragments of the crystal were near his hand, and an idea came to him in this crucial moment. While everyone was still looking at the fish, he grasped a shard tightly in his hand, slicing it open until blood dripped down. "Your Highness!" Wang Xi shouted in shock from beside him. But Prince Jing waved his hand dismissively. There wasn't much time, so this was the only way. Wang Xi stamped his feet, hesitating between bandaging Prince Jing and protecting Master Xiaoyu. In the end, he chose to protect Master Xiaoyu because Prince Jing's expression told him to. He couldn't go against Prince Jing's wishes. Having swept off the monk's hat, the little carp fell to the ground, flapping. Wang Xi quickly grabbed the spare crystal bottle and put the fish back into it. Now that his fish was safe, Prince Jing focused on finding the monk's flaws. And he quickly realized that there were no scars to speak of on the bare head of the monk whose hat had been knocked off. This was a fake monk. This was what Xiaoyu wanted him to know. "Qianshi, what happened? Your hand." The emperor had blinked, and in that short amount of time, the fish had already leaped onto the monk. With another glance, he realized that Prince Jing's hand was injured. Wang Xi desperately wanted to speak for his master, but Prince Jing stopped him. He instead wrote on the front of Wang Xi's robes, "Royal father, please hear me out. I understand that the monk was an impostor who had not gone through the ordination ceremony. Desperate times call for desperate measures, so I threw the crystal bottle at him to force him to reveal his flaws." The emperor had been on edge ever since he heard about the nursery rhyme. Now, he looked back and forth from the blood-stained robes to the crystal fragments on the ground, his heart in chaos. In a panic, the fake monk put his hat on again, but it was too late. The emperor ordered the guards to hold him down firmly and take his hat off to check his head. Their inspection revealed he really was unordained. The emperor understood now. He'd seen the fish go flying because Prince Jing had broken the crystal bottle in his haste. Prince Jing was unable to speak and couldn't prove his innocence, so this was the only means at his disposal to expose the fake monks. Out of habit and narrow-mindedness, the emperor had suspected Prince Jing at first and was nearly taken advantage of by a bunch of fake monks. Prince Jing's hands were still bleeding, and his face was pale. The emperor regretted his actions very much. He patted Prince Jing's shoulder and said gently, "Tianchi, my son, you've suffered. Quickly go to the imperial physicians and have them take a look at your injury." He ordered Luo Ruisheng and Wang Xi to help Prince Jing to the side hall to wait for the imperial physicians. The third prince and sixth prince, along with the kneeling and kowtowing fake monks, were all left to face the furious emperor. Alrighty, everyone. We have finally reached the end of chapters 39 through 43. And these were some very nice chapters. I'm just going to go ahead and get started on my thoughts, going backwards, like I usually do. The first thing I want to say is that I just found it funny, not like haha funny, but interesting funny, that the emperor believes that Prince Jing was jumping to desperate measures in order to prove his innocence, when really it was all Xiaoyu's plan. And it's just funny because no one knows that it's really the fish that has been orchestrating these things whenever someone needs to be revealed. The fish has been intentionally doing these things. And I just think it's super, super cool. And I'm wondering if after this incident that the emperor will believe even more so that yes, this truly has to be an auspicious fish, because every time there's something fishy, no pun intended, going around or going on, the fish is the one that leads to the exposing of these devious plans. So to me, as an emperor, I would assume that's very auspicious, because if there are plots going on under my nose to try to manipulate me into thinking this or that or doing this and that, and I have a fish exposing all this fishiness, oh yeah, I like this fish. So hopefully the emperor, thinks about that and picks up on that, even though he already thinks it's an auspicious fish. So going to my next note. I'm not even going to comment really on the fact that Xiaoyu was kissed by Prince Jing in his fish form on certain parts of his body in that whole scenario. But I just knew it though. I knew Prince Jing was not asleep. I was like, yeah, Liu, you're pretending to be asleep and waiting for him to fall asleep. And then when you think he's fell asleep, he's actually pretending to be asleep because he knows you're going to come out and do something. So it was just funny that I was right as I was reading that. But the other thing I wanted to mention was that I was just so happy. I don't know why, but genuinely happy when Li Yu finally let Xiongfeng nudge him with his nose. Like, that's just such a small thing. But I was like, Xiongfeng's been trying to connect with you physically on this level for a while now, but always being separated by the crystal glass. And so now that you both were out in the open, it was nice that he stuffed down his fear. And he was like, you know what? I think I'm strong enough to handle it anyway. Let's go ahead and have this bonding moment. That was just so cute. Like, if I was either of their owners, if I was Prince Jing or Ye Qinghuan, I would have just thought that was so freaking adorable. So then the other thing, well, of course we have to talk about it, because how could we not? The gift that Prince Jing had created for Liu. Oh my God. It was so, oh my gosh, it was just so sweet and just so freaking amazing. This guy basically had his entire manor reconstructed just so his little fishy could have an entire world to swim in, and all knowing about all the little details inside. That was just so amazing, even putting himself in there. And then I loved when Liu was like, oh my gosh, why are you alone? And went to go find the little fish and plucked it off and put it in there with him. It was so cute. Oh my gosh. And then the last thing that I want to say was actually about the killing of Huanhua. I don't know who did it, but I feel like it was probably like the sixth prince, maybe the third prince. And I don't know if it was her, like Huanhua's handwriting or not, or if they had someone else forge that letter or what. But I'm definitely thinking it was one of their people that had the girl killed, which, still worked out in everyone's favor other than concubine Chu and her son. But speaking of, the revenge that Prince Jing got in favor of Liu was hilarious. I was like, bruh, this is so awesomely petty. This is the right amount of petty that is needed. So anyway, I don't have anything else to say. I just wanted to point out moments that stood out to me that just thoroughly make me enjoy this book. Yeah. I'm happy also that Liu is learning how to write. Not that that's really important, but also, why you gotta teach him how to write like that? Because when I was growing up, I didn't learn to write like that with someone reaching all the way around me. But I don't know, maybe it's because I was small and they didn't have to. I don't know. Actually, I'm left-handed, so my mom couldn't teach me how to write anyway, so that's a whole nother thing. Anyway, let me not ramble. I will see you guys next time when we read the next, maybe, hopefully, 5 chapters. Have a great day or a great night. 我爱你们.